Hello everyone. Welcome to Auntie M Interprets, where I go down various theological rabbit holes and see what I can find. In this series, we are talking about the gods of Sarah, Rebekah, and Rachel, instead of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is part 3, Rachel's gods. Fair warning, this is going to be a long one. In the last episode, Rebekah's gods, we talked about some differences between matriarchal and patriarchal societies, and why that's important if we want to understand how and why Sarah's son Isaac ended up marrying Rebekah. In this episode, we will be dealing with what happened next, and how the gods disappeared from Abrahamic spirituality. Now, as promised, we pick up where we left off, with Rebekah's sons Esau and Jacob's rather melodramatic love life. Rebekah had 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau married 2 local women that his mother hated, and then a third related woman that Rebekah hated just as much. Jacob went off back to Samaria. While there, he married a pair of sisters and got busy with their maids too, ending up eventually with 12 strapping boys and 1 girl. All of the sons together are the patriarchs of what we now call the tribes of Israel. And here's where things get interesting, because among all these sons there is, at last, a single solitary daughter, Dinah. We don't hear about her very much, and there's a tragic and significant reason why, all bound up with the reason why the tribes of Israel only worship one God. But first, we need to get this numerous family out of Samaria and back to Canaan, where Rebekah is waiting for the niece who will inherit her household and all its traditions. 7 years after the melodrama that ended in 2 sisters getting married to the same man, it was time for Jacob's family to go back to his parents' household, as he had promised to do 14 years earlier. Leah and Rachel were getting tired of being under their father's thumb, and everyone was tired of how badly Jacob was being treated. Laban, however, Jacob's uncle and his father-in-law too, wasn't going to let them go easily. He was enjoying the good life, the patriarch of a large and thriving household, and his sons and his brothers were happy to reap the benefits. Jacob, Leah, and Rachel together decided that they were going to have to sneak away from the maternal family house. So when Laban was off doing something else, Jacob took all the herds that he was owed and sent them into hiding, ready to leave town. Leah packed up her goods and the things of her personal household. Rachel packed up her personal belongings too, and in among her belongings she packed her family's gods. This is the first time in all of Genesis that we hear about anyone having gods to pack away. And if you're anything like me, I always thought of Rachel's family as being unconverted, idolatrous, and that this got fixed later. But that's not the story. The story says that Rachel and Leah had the right cultural background, and that means that Sarah's tent, which was now Rebekah's tent, also had gods. To be fair, gods like this are pretty common in polytheistic traditions, and they are all over the place in Sumeria. Here's one from Nippur, of the god Enlil. It's pretty small, easy to pack and store away. This is the kind of object Rachel squirreled away in her baggage, the kind of object that Sarah and Rebekah would have been familiar with as well. And all of this evidence implies pretty strongly that we're looking at a tradition of household worship, still common thousands of years later in polytheistic cultures, where women are in charge of the daily maintenance and ritual practices of household devotion. If you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. Men are out wandering with the sheep and the goats and the cows a lot of the time. When they're not doing that, they're fighting wars and getting killed and going on business trips and having accidents and all sorts of things that take them away from home. But home is the center of operations. Home is where food is stored, where children are raised, where community lives. And so, while men are often in charge of big ceremonial events, it's the women who take care of the daily spiritual practices around home and hearth. And if you know your fairy tales, it's women who are most closely connected with the gods, too. This would be doubly true of a household where inheritance, not just ethnic identity, is matrilineal. A woman who is raised taking care of the family gods won't have to leave them behind to care for some other family's gods. The same gods that watched over her birth will watch over her when she herself gives birth, all through her life and at her death too. Now let's connect this to Laban and his sister's son Jacob and their growing clan of kids. This is probably how Laban saw his household. Him at the top, his sons and brothers, his friends and allies with him, enjoying the good life provided by his 2 daughters and their maids. Their husband, his nephew, was out in the fields making him a good profit with sheep and goats. Smartest thing Laban ever did, getting free labor out of Jacob in return for marrying his girls. The last thing Laban wanted was for Jacob to return home to Canaan. Laban had already done everything he could to make Jacob stay, marrying him to the heiress of his household instead of the younger daughter first, then keeping him dependent and poor. He just needed to wear Jacob down and get the man to realize that he was part of Laban's household now, and Laban could continue enjoying his position as a powerful, wealthy patriarch. Laban didn't count on his daughters. This is how they saw the family. As far as they were concerned, Laban's whole scheme reeked. See, according to the marriage contracts, Jacob hadn't married into Laban's family. The daughters would be going into Rebekah's household, and it wasn't a gift. Laban was squeezing the family for every last drop of profit he could get, and his daughters were rather resentful about being sold this way. Now that Jacob was ready to return home, they were more than willing to go too, and they were going to take everything that was theirs with them. For Rachel, that included the family gods. Why was that such a big deal? I don't know for certain, but I can hazard a guess. As an elder sister, Leah should have inherited her mother's household, including the daily spiritual practices of worship. As Jacob's first wife, she also inherited Rebekah's household, which would have frozen Rachel out of any inheritance at all. This is incredibly unfair, and it doesn't make sense either. No woman in her right mind would calmly allow her sister to take her fiancé and her position in her new family, leaving herself with absolutely nothing, just because her sister loves that man. The scriptures show us many times that the sisters bargained with each other over their husband's attention even after they were married. There's no reason they couldn't have done so before. The only way to even things out would have been an equal trade, for Leah to offer Rachel her position in their mother's household in return for being Jacob's first wife and inheritor of Rebekah's household. This makes Rachel and Leah even. But as soon as the family decides to leave town, Rachel's position is under threat. If she leaves the household goods and gods to her greedy, selfish father, not only will there be nobody to properly honor the gods at home, but she and her people will lose their independence and end up being subordinate to Leah. This is the last thing Rachel is willing to accept. To keep her household status equal with her sisters, and to keep the honor of her gods intact, she must take her mother's goods and gods with her, and deal with whatever consequences may follow. The consequences will be dire, because the stakes are just as high for Laban as they are for his daughter. The gods of the house signal divine authority, power, and belonging. Their presence ensures the community's well-being. Removing the gods is an act of excommunication and condemnation. Without the gods, Laban and his people will have no focus for their customary rituals, no divine authority to lean on, and no power to appeal to. When Laban returns from his business trip, it's bad enough that his daughters and grandsons are gone, along with a good percentage of the herds he counted as his. It's the absence of the gods, the wordless but absolute condemnation that is signaled by their absence, that sends him, his sons, and his brothers riding hell-bent for leather after his daughters. His status, his identity within the community are founded on the presence of the gods in his household, and he will do literally anything to get them back. I'm not sure Rachel knew just how desperate her father would be to get the gods back. Surely she didn't expect him to agree that whoever had them would be killed on the spot. To save her own life, then, she resorted to subterfuge. After a fruitless search and a rather unbelievable display of reconciliation and affection, Laban and his gang returned to their hometown. For the foreseeable future, then, Rachel and Leah were equals. Rachel had her tent and household, and Leah had hers. So here's how the matter stands when Jacob and his family return to Canaan. Leah, as Jacob's first wife and Rebekah's niece, has the promise of inheriting her mother-in-law's household goods. Rachel has her mother's household goods, and both women are equal in status. Then a miracle occurs. Leah's seventh child is a daughter. This is the first daughter in 3 generations. Abraham's wives had sons, Isaac had sons, and they all brought their wives to their mother's tents. But now Jacob has a daughter, and that's a game changer, because under matriarchal law, Dinah inherits Leah's household goods at the very least, and possibly Rachel's as well. No more bringing the wife home to inherit more stuff for Leah's sons. To make matters more complicated, Dinah's husband, whoever that happens to be, would likely be the next patriarch of the tribe. Thus begins the tragedy of Dinah, and the story of how women lost, well, everything. The story starts with Jacob's family camped outside of a prosperous town. There are rather a lot of them by this point. They are already a sizable tribe. Any meeting on this scale is going to require some diplomacy. Luckily, nobody really wants to fight. Jacob's family wants to go shopping and see the sights and do the do's, and the folk of the town are more than happy to oblige. Dinah meets up with some local girls to go dancing, and here's where things begin to go south, sort of. The son of the town chief, a young man named Shechem, sees Dinah, and, well, he kidnaps her and seduces her. Or else just straight up rapes her. Either way, she ends up locked away in Shechem's house, and now there's about to be a war. Jacob wants his daughter back, or else. There's just one problem. Shechem has fallen in love with the girl and wants to marry her. A lot of other men in town are in love too, and want to marry the girls they've met among Jacob's people. Now remember that there is still a strong matriarchal streak among Jacob's clan, at least among the older generation. So Jacob's people come up with a compromise that fits right in with the matriarchal tradition. Shechem and his friends can all get married, but they'll have to give up their identities and become part of Jacob's tribe. That means they'll have to get circumcised. Shechem is thrilled at the chance to marry Dinah, and he immediately agrees. So do all the other men, and the upshot is that everyone in town are going to mix and mingle with Jacob's crowd, marrying and being family, and won't this be grand? Well, it would be, except for Dinah's brothers, Simeon and Levi. Oh, they are going to claim that everything they do is vengeance for their sister. But is that really true? Because let's face it, right now, they are some of the most important people in the whole tribe. They are the second and third born of the first wife, and they're used to throwing their weight around. But what would happen if Dinah got married? If Shechem and Dinah get married, Simeon and Levi lose their authority in the clan. Why? Because Dinah is the matriarchal heir of Jacob's people, and Shechem is the darling boy of his. Right now, Dinah is still legally a dependent. When she gets married, however, she will become the matriarch of her own not-so-little household. All of the young men who treat Shechem as their leader, and presumably their new wives who grew up with Dinah, will recognize Dinah as the heir of Leah's household, and therefore Jacob's as well. Even worse, Shechem, as Dinah's husband, will be in the running for becoming patriarch of the whole blended clan. This would make Shechem and Dinah the ultimate power couple, and Simeon and Levi would lose whatever power they have. They aren't going to let that happen. What do they do about it? Well, when Shechem and all the men in town are recovering from the pain of circumcision, Simeon and Levi go in and kill them. Then they grab all of the gold and all of the riches and all of the women and children. In short, everything and everyone that would have gone to Dinah after her marriage. and Simeon and Levi take them for themselves. In one bloody day, Simeon and Levi instantly became the wealthiest people of Israel, and Dinah, their baby sister, lost everything. Very soon after this, Jacob would formally end matriarchal traditions among his people, ordering all the women to remove their jewelry and the clothes that marked their identity and authority, take all their gods from their tents, and bury everything under a tree. This is the story of Sarah's gods, and the story of how matriarchy died. It was not a good thing. It was so evil that Jacob, who gave even Reuben a bit of a break, cursed the sons who had made it happen. The book of Isaiah, however, promises that the daughter of Zion will not always be left alone in her tent, bereft of her inheritance and her gods. Her position must and shall be restored. Will you be a part of that restoration? Or will you, like Simeon and Levi, kill to keep something that was never yours? Thanks for watching.